What I want you to notice in this worksheet is that columns B, C, D and E are rather too wide for their contents, and that's making the column header appear to be in the wrong place. First I'm going to resize column B, and I'm going to do that by hovering the mouse cursor over the intersection between column B and C, and when you do that you get the resize cursor shape displayed. When you see the resize cursor shape, hold down the mouse button and drag to the left to make the column a little bit narrower. That looks a bit better. And let's do the same for columns C and D and E. If you make a column too narrow to display its contents, you'll see hash symbols in the column. If you live in the USA or Canada, you might be more used to calling this the pound sign or the number sign, but in this tutorial I'll refer to these symbols as hash symbols. Now we'll automatically resize column B so that it's the perfect width for its contents. And to do that I once again hover the mouse cursor over the intersection of columns B and C, but this time double click to make the column the perfect width. And why don't I do the same for column C, column D and column E? Now you might think that's a lot of double clicking. Isn't there a way of automatically sizing all of the columns without having to individually double click on all of those column intersections? And of course there is. The way to do that is to first click the Select All button at the top left of the worksheet. Now the Select All button is very special because it selects every single cell on this worksheet. That's going right down to row 1,000,000 and all the way across to the thousands of columns on the right hand side. If I select all and then hover over the intersection of two of the column headers and double click, every single column is automatically resized in one operation. But notice that the auto resize function has been rather too clever. It's taken the contents of cell A1 and made column A wide enough to accommodate it. But that's not what we'd normally want. Now we could manually resize the column to try and make it look a bit better, or we could tell Excel, look, will you resize column A, but ignore the value in A1, just look at the values in A4 to A9. And here's how you would do that. First select A4 to A9. Make sure you're on the Home tab on the ribbon, and then in the Cells group you'll see Format, click on this and Auto Fit Column Width. When you do that, the column is perfectly sized, but only in relation to the contents of A4 to A9. Notice that the text in A1 is now spilling over into B1, C1, D1 and E1. This is what always happens when text is too wide for its cell and the adjacent cells are empty. If the adjacent cells are not empty, let's see that work with Jan, then the text is truncated. You only see the left-hand part of it. I'm often asked, if I have a worksheet and all of the columns are different widths, they're very different, how can I make them all the same width? Well, it's really easy. You just select the columns that you want to be the same width, resize one of the columns, and all of the other columns will automatically adjust to be the same size as the one that you adjusted. Now let's see how the same technique works in exactly the same way for rows. Let's make row 3 a lot taller than the other rows. This is very useful when you're working on the formatting of your worksheet and you want to space things out. A much better solution than inserting padding rows and padding columns. If we want to put row 3 back how it was, we can hover over the intersection of rows 3 and 4 and double click with the mouse to automatically resize the row.